Greetings, welcome, Swagatham. In this video, I seek to remind ourselves, first me and then all of us, of something that we are at risk of losing sight of altogether. And that is the idea that inspired the great souls in the distant past, the idea of human greatness. It is to be noted that today we don't really think and talk about human greatness. We certainly talk a great deal and we hear a great deal about how rich a person is. For example, how many billionaires India has, and in what order of wealth does this particular Indian billionaire stand? Is so and so the third richest man in the world, the 10th richest man in the world, so on and so forth. We no longer feel jealous of anyone because of his or her wisdom. We envy people because of their wealth. That shows where our heart is attached. In the great ages of human existence on planet Earth, irrespective of which culture it was, the predominant emphasis fell not on being successful, prosperous, or rich, but on being great and on being honorable. These are very, very loaded words in history. Great, honorable, two words. Do we desire greatness? Do we desire honor? Historians tell us, for example, that Napoleon Bonaparte was able to achieve his great exploits not merely because he was a military genius, which he was, but also because of the great sense of honor that the French people had. If you place Napoleon among a people who are dishonorable, then he would not be Napoleon, at least as successful as Napoleon turned out to be. So, the greatness of Napoleon, which everybody accepts, everybody praises, is derived to a large extent from the quality of the people that he led. Now, if you imagine a horse race, he may be the best jockey in the world, the best rider in the world, but if your horse is no good, then there is only uh, as as far as you can go, only this far that you can go. You cannot win a race. So it's always important to be mindful of the quality of the people. Today, when politicians tell us every day about how India is being marched to a great prosperity, great future, etc., I laugh and I cry because all this political rhetoric is based on complete ignorance as to what constitutes the real progress of a people. A nation doesn't progress simply because there are factories that produce goods and there are markets where these goods are sold. A nation becomes great because of the quality of the people. And next to nothing is being done about making the people of India great. So, when I share the contents of this video with you, I have this larger concern. I want all countries, being an Indian, I want my country, which actually means the people of India, to be great, to be honored, to be respected, to be valued. But I don't think that the paths to attaining that goal, eminently desirable goal, is exactly what is prescribed, the roadmap prescribed to us today. Well, you will come to this conclusion if you listen to the idea of human greatness, as we may find, for example, in an author like Aristotle. In a previous video, I introduced you to Socrates. It will be my intention now and then to introduce you to the great souls of the past, the great minds of the past, because it's very important that we have a sense of history, a sense of how our species has progressed and maybe regressed, improved as well as got degenerated over time, so that we may know what constitutes the real foundation for a meaningful and dignified life. So, in this video, I take up Aristotle's idea of the high minded man, or the great minded man, as he called the man of dignity, the man of greatness. What is human greatness? What are the ingredients of human greatness? And the term that Aristotle used for this is the great minded man. Man, of course, in those days meant human beings in general. It is a gender neutral term. Man means men and women. So, the great minded man, or great mindedness as far as human species is concerned. What is Aristotle's idea? And this will certainly help us in our times, as we are losing sight of it altogether, to be reminded that these were the great concerns in the past. So I'm going to take you in a kind of somewhat disjointed manner, because these are ideas spread over a large space of writing, particularly his work Nicomachean Ethics. Nicomachean Ethics, Nichomachen, Nicomachean Ethics, Ethics, as well as his work titled Ethics, which is the first part of a book that he meant on politics. But as he began to think and write about the topic, he realized that politics will be incomplete without ethics. Therefore, he happened to split that work into two parts. The first part was ethics, and the second part of politics. So, referring to three books here. One is ethics, second is politics, third is Nicomachean Ethics. All right. Now let's ask the question: what is Aristotle's idea of the great-minded human being? It's very simple. I'm sure you'll be interested in this topic. The first thing that Aristotle says, and let me read a few words from him. It is obvious that the great-minded human being, he says man, human being, if he is worthy of the greatest consideration, must be not only a good man, but one of the very best. Now, immediately we are reminded of Jesus' instruction that we should seek perfection. See how connected all these are? Jesus says, be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Please understand that this emphasis on human perfection characterized human thinking in the best part or best epochs of human history. If today we are not mindful of it, then it tells its own story. So he says we need to be the very best. Only a person who strives to be one of the very best can be considered a person who is truly great minded. There's a great deal to be said about it, but then since I need to include many more points in this, I am proceeding fast. So, how does one become perfect? Not merely by increasing your knowledge, which you must, not only by increasing your wisdom, which is even more important, but also by improving your virtues. Act virtuously, which is a very important concept in all of Athenian or Greek thinking, and in particular Aristotle's thinking, the virtuous man, which is very different from the religiously pious man. And to him, according to him, a virtuous person will always act honorably. In other words, he will rise above the temptations to degrade oneself in order to achieve something in this world. Honor is to be valued above all other things. Now let me read that sentence. It says, why should a man do anything dishonorable to whom even the greatest things in the world are small, measured by the estimate he entertains of his own worth? So, who will act honorably? Only those who have a high regard for their own worth. Now, Jesus reflects the same idea when he says, he puts it differently, but the idea is the same. He says, what does it profit you if a man wins the whole world but loses his soul? Now, losing his soul is the Jesus equivalent of Aristotle's losing your honor. To the Athenians, to lose your honor is to lose your soul. Honor is the very soul of human existence. How do you lose your honor? How do you lose your soul? By compromising on your integrity and dignity in order to achieve or gain something in this world. For example, when a man takes bribes, he is becoming cheaper and cheaper even as his material wealth increases, because he is becoming more and more dishonorable. And a man who allows himself, or a man who makes himself dishonorable, is someone who has absolutely no value for his own worth, his own dignity. So each time we compromise our personal dignity in order to gain some advantage in this world, whatever that advantage may be, if any advantage of any kind is sought to be secured by compromising our dignity, what it means is that we have absolutely no value for our own worth. At the same time, we expect everybody else to respect our worth. That cannot be. How can somebody else respect our worth if we don't respect our worth ourselves? How do we know that we respect our worth? When we act honorably, we respect our worth. When we act dishonorably, we corrupt our worth. This is something extremely important for everybody living today to understand. And Aristotle goes on to say, honor is the reward of virtue. That's why I said that virtue is an important concept, not merely in Aristotle, but in the whole of Greek thinking. And therefore, honor is given by people only to those who are virtuous and those who are good. Being virtuous, being good, they're more or less the same thing. Therefore, do you want to be honored? Then lead a virtuous and good life. So that's something. I'm going to skip a lot of passages and come to something that I think I need to emphasize in this presentation. And then he says, a great-minded man will not run petty risks. Now, risk-taking is a very important aspect of our personality. What is our attitude to risk-taking? Now, the very curious thing about human nature is that people are willing to take high risks for small things, whereas they will not take any risk for great things. For example, people will not accept risks for preserving the high values of liberty, equality, fraternity in a society. But they may run any risk in order to secure some trivial advantage for themselves. So, let me read that passage. The great minded man is not fond of running petty risks. At the same time, when a great risk presents itself, he will willingly confront danger. So, on the one hand, he will not embrace petty risks for petty gains, but if there is a need to accept grave danger, grave risks, because the cost involved is great, then he will not flinch from this. You can think of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ in this context. And spares not his life, as deeming life secondary when higher interests are concerned. In other words, a great minded person will be committed to high ideals, and he'll have the courage of conviction to uphold those ideals even at the cost of his own life or her own life. Let's proceed further. The alternative, of course, is to become cowards. Uh, the next quality that Aristotle identifies about a great minded person is that he will not seek anybody's favor. He will not seek anybody's favor. It is this favor seeking that makes us puny, petty, small creatures. We should never seek favors from anyone. So let me read that passage. It is also a mark of the great minded man that he will either not ask a favor at all or do it with difficulty. On the other hand, he is ready to do a service to all. That's very interesting. It's extremely interesting how Aristotle contrasts the favor seeking attitude and the service oriented nature of human beings. Now, Jesus said about himself, the Son of Man has come not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for the sins of the world. Now, the same idea. You will never see Jesus asking for a favor, but Jesus is always ready to serve because he realized, as many Christians don't realize today, and many non Christians and non Christians, that they don't understand the greatness in service and the greatness of service. They think that being served is a great thing. If you're served by others all your life and you don't care to serve others, then you're a parasite. And a parasite is not entitled to dignity. And a parasite will always be seeking favors from others. So, the first thing we have to do if you want to cultivate the service orientation is to renounce the favor seeking attitude today in public life. And for better, for worse, I have been in public life for nearly half a century. I can tell you that it's very rarely these days that you come across somebody who is averse to seeking favors. Both when I was in the Delhi Minorities Commission and in the National Commission for Minority Education, and later the principal of St. Stephen's College, I've had thousands of people visit me. But believe you me, everyone came seeking favors, small favors. And they will give you any excuse, 1,000 reasons why you should break all rules and regulations to do them a favor. And I used to be amazed how people holding very exalted offices, you won't believe how high they were, how unmindful of their personal dignity they were. So I understand the wisdom of what Aristotle is saying. He says these two things are totally incompatible. If you are the favor seeking person, then you will never be the service oriented person. And vice versa. If you are a service oriented person, you will never be a favor seeking person. If you are a favor seeking person, then you are not entitled to dignity and there is no honor in you, and you are not, according to Aristotle, a great minded person. I hope that's clear. Now let's proceed further. Then he says, a great minded man will not be the first to seize on honorable distinctions when offered, but he will gladly let others proceed, being slow and backward, except indeed when a difficult thing is to be done. He says, a great minded person will not be very slow. He will show no eagerness, no impatience in attaining distinctions. Having lived in Delhi, I can tell you how people jockey for distinctions. Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, and all that. People don't realize what sort of jockeying, whatever from lobbying goes on before the list is finalized. And I know some of the people who have been awarded these great distinctions. I don't want to show any disrespect to these national distinctions, but I want to tell you that, very often it's not merit that matters, but how hard you can push. So, only dishonorable men will push for distinctions, but at the same time, if people want to honor them, they will not run away from it. because they know that people have a need to recognize what is great. That's why. He has no need to be acclaimed by the people, but he knows that people have a need to be grateful. They have a need to express their appreciation. Further on, Aristotle makes a very important distinction. He says, a great minded person will be more concerned for truth than for opinion. Very important. I think this is something we should always remember, particularly today. It's a clear sign of great mindedness that a person is committed to truth and therefore will take the opinions that people articulate from time to time with great circumspection. What happens today? We don't care for the truth, therefore, we are always consumers of the opinions of others. That's why the media comes to have such a great influence. Public opinion becomes as important as we consider our own opinions unimportant. If you don't attach any value to your opinion, then all that you have to go by is public opinion. And public opinion, a ton of it, will not constitute the truth. So it's not opinions that we need, it is truth that we need. A country is helped not by opinions, opinions are manufactured by people who hope to gain from it. That's why journalism is such a mega industry today. And journalists wield such enormous influence because they are extremely handy, profitable, convenient tools in the hands of those who wield power. There's a nexus between the centers of state power and media houses. Since this is a subject very apparent, very obvious to everyone, I refrain from making further comments on it. So remember this much: a great minded person will be committed to truth, and therefore he will be very responsible to himself in accepting whatever opinions that are floating in the air. Do not lap up all the opinions that you hear all around you. Now, the next thing he says is, a great minded person will never flatter anyone. And let me read that part. He says, we see that flatterers have always something menial in their character. Menial means something low, something dishonorable, something cheap. Flattery is cheap. If you think you need to flatter someone, or if you feel inclined to flatter someone, please realize you're cheapening yourself. And you're going farther and farther away from the goal of becoming a great minded person, which, according to Aristotle, is the greatest human achievement. So, flattery. So, opinions, opinion mongering, flattering people. Now, now, I'll read just one more sentence and I'll stop because time will get out of hand. Finally, as to his appearance and manner, it will be noted that the great minded man, Aristotle packs many things into this one sentence. Therefore, I'll take maybe 5-6 minutes to explain this and I'll stop. It will be noted that the great minded man is slow in his movements. He says, even from the way a person walks, you can find out whether that person is high minded or shallow in his character. So, slow in his movements. Do not walk around recklessly. Do not be very dramatic. Do not be aggressive. Don't rush. There is plenty of time in the world. Second thing he says, his voice is deep. Pay attention to this is something very interesting. For the last several decades, I have judged people not entirely based on, but largely based on the quality of their voice. It's a fairly reliable test. Listen to the quality of a person's voice, and then you will know what that person really is. The voice of a shallow person sounds metallic. Metallic. The voice of a noble person sounds deep. It comes closer to nature, the voice of nature. Deep. So his voice is deep and his discourse weighty. He will not indulge in frivolous talk. He will not babble. He will not rattle away. He will not go on mouthing things just for the heck of saying. Cheap talk. His discourse will be weighty. If you listen to him for 5 minutes, there'll be meat that you can chew in what he says. But again, as you know, in our times, people don't like discourses of this kind. They want something very trivial, shallow, something that tickles them, superficial stuff. Anything deep tires people out. That shows how far away from this goal of human dignity and greatness that we are. So, you say, such is the great minded man. Now, why I have shared these thoughts with you? Now, obviously, there's a highly inadequate presentation of Aristotle's idea of the great minded human being. It's only a taste of what you can actually gain by reading Aristotle. It amazes me even today, after several decades of reading classics, etc., that people living 2000, 2500 years ago in the past, they had such enormous divine wisdom that today we can only stand at a distance and admire. We are becoming shallow and we are not even mindful of the need to become great. That's the greatest tragedy. We are running after vain and shallow things, cheap things, and we somehow derive some kind of curious, malicious delight in cheapening ourselves and cheapening our species, humankind. I remember reading in a play called Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. One of the characters, either Vladimir or Estragon, saying, our most basic duty is to show the species to which we belong in a better light. We have a fundamental duty. And what is that duty? To show the species to which we belong. Which is the species to which we belong? Humankind. We have a duty to show humankind in a better light. How can we do that? By showing, by living that human greatness. Now, that's what Aristotle is also saying. And it will be highly beneficial if we would become mindful of this. But sad to say, even the religiosity that we practice takes us away from this goal. Whereas, if you look at the religiosity of great spiritual lights like Jesus Christ, like Buddha, etc., they're all of this category that reflects the light of human greatness. And it's their example that we are supposed to, and we are required to emulate if we are interested in ourselves for our own good, not for their sake, but for our own sake. So there is this possibility in the human sphere. We can either become great minded human beings or we can become cheap and shallow creatures. It's not an easy thing to become a great minded human being, I grant, but the alternative is no option to become a shallow creature about so that one becomes embarrassed about oneself. Now, therefore, I thought it would be worth our time to remind ourselves some of these great insights produced centuries ago so that today in our times we can benefit from it. I wish all of you a great day ahead.